What's up, guys? We are back with another video. Today we have the iPhone 13 Pro versus the iPhone 11. This was a highly requested video. A lot of iPhone 11 users still out there. Not a necessary upgrade if you're just a normal person, but this does have a really good upgrades. I will say that. So you will feel the upgrade if you do decide to get you a 13 Pro. So let's go ahead and get started here. Let's talk about the price because it is a pretty big price jump. So the 11 can cost you around, the cheapest refurbished, is $337. I'll have that link down below. And then we also have the iPhone 11 starting at $1,000, so it is pretty expensive, guys. But like I said, let's see if the upgrade is going to be worth it for you. Alright, so let's start off with the design of these two phones. Now, obviously, the 13 Pro looks newer, mostly because it has just more cameras. The cameras are bigger. It has the matte finish on the back as well, too. Just gives it kind of that expensive look. But the iPhone 11, like I said in the previous video, it still looks really great, man. Just look at it. It's still a really beautiful device. And also, I prefer the kind of design of the iPhone 11 as far as it being in the palm, right? It just feels much better in the palm as opposed to the 13 Pro, right? It has these sharp edges and it just doesn't feel as good as the smooth edges. So that's one thing that I've noticed that I just really haven't, I just don't like on the 13 Pro. As far as the size of both devices, the 13 Pro is actually a little bit smaller and they look about the same in thickness, and the 13 Pro definitely weighs a little bit more. You can definitely feel the heft a little bit there. Now you do have the aluminum railing on here versus the I believe the stainless steel. And again, I like the look of the stainless steel, but it does pick up fingerprints a lot too. And you can see the button layout is pretty much essentially the same on these two phones as well too. So that's pretty much it for the hardware. They both have stereo speakers, which we will get into, but they both still look really great. Alright, so here is a super important upgrade here. There's a big difference with screen quality on both of these phones. So the 13 Pro has a Super Retina XDR OLED display. It's 120 Hz, HDR10 Dolby Vision, gets 1200 nits peak brightness. Like I said, 6.1 inches, and it is 1170 by 2532. So think of that as 1080p plus, and then it's 460 for the PPI. The iPhone 11 has also a 6.1 inch display, but it's a IPS panel. It's a Retina IPS panel. It gets up to 625 nits brightness, so the 13 Pro is much brighter. As you can see, I'm not sure if you can tell, they're both max brightness. And this is a 720p plus display with 326 for the PPI. So you have a higher resolution on the 13 Pro. It's also an OLED display versus the IPS display. And then you also have, I don't know if you guys can tell, it's slightly smaller. The notch is just a little bit smaller. And you also have a higher PPI on the 13 Pro, but the colors just look way better. So if you're doing like, image editing, the colors are just way more accurate on the 13 Pro display. That's one thing that I noticed off the rip. And also just watching 1080p content and looking at icons and stuff on the 13 Pro compared to the 11, you can see icons just look a little bit sharper here, but it's not to say the 11's the display is bad. What's really going on here is the 120 Hertz. Now, a lot of people, you won't really notice the 120 Hertz. What I noticed, a lot of people just really don't even notice it that much. But it's one thing that I definitely notice myself, and you really notice it when you're scrolling through applications and stuff like that. Let's say like the YouTube homepage and stuff like that. Anything where you're doing a ton of scrolling, it's gonna feel buttery smooth, the 120 Hertz, versus the 60 Hertz panel. So that's one thing that I definitely noticed. And also, you will really notice a difference with gaming. When I showed you guys how PUBG runs at 90 Hertz on this, or 90 frames versus the 60 frames, it is really noticeable as well too for gamers. So also take that into consideration. I will go ahead and show you guys that, but definitely I think you're getting a really nice display upgrade. Again, not necessary because the 11's display still looks really good for the average person, but if you do want that 120 Hertz, the higher res, being able to play games at 90 frames, this is also a really great option. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the specs a little bit more here. So the iPhone 11 is running iOS 15. You also have the Apple A13 chip, and you also have 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. The 13 Pro is also running, iOS 15. It has the Apple A15 chip. The base model on here, you do get more storage, 128 gigs and 6 gigs of RAM. So you also get more RAM as well. Now, as you can see with these Geekbench scores, it looks like, a significant jump, and it is. It's a pretty big jump as far as these scores, because you're almost at the 5,000s. But when we're in real life, I'm going to say you're not actually getting a real speed upgrade when it comes to, the speed of these phones. The iPhone 11 is extremely fast here. Just launching applications and stuff like that, just your normal everyday applications, they both basically feel on par with each other. The iPhone 11 does not feel like it's slowing down by any means. Now, when we get into games, you can kind of feel like that little second difference, right? But it's really not that big of a difference. It's like the 11 is right behind it. So it's not like the 11 is glitching. I rarely hear iPhone 11 users complaining about the speed of their phone, because there is no real issue with the speed of their phone. You keep this thing updated and it just runs like a charm. So it's just a really fast phone. Like I said, the only thing that feels faster is the scrolling, the 120 hertz. It feels faster and smoother on the 13 Pro here. Now I want to show you guys the gaming, so we're gonna go ahead and get into PUBG here. So here is the gaming. Like I said, if you're a casual gamer, the iPhone 11 is actually still extremely good for gaming. On PUBG, we can actually still max everything out here. We can even go to Ultra HD here, and it plays extremely smooth. But like I said, if you're like a competitive PUBG player, right, you have an option on the 13 Pro that does 90 frames, and this is, only possible if you have a high refresh rate display. So basically everything looks smoother, it feels smoother. For shooting games like this, obviously the higher the frame rate, the better it is going to be for the gamers. I'm not a big competitive gamer, but I do know that the higher the frame rate, you're going to, be able to just be better. So yeah, definitely take that into consideration. I know everyone is not a, competitive PUBG player, but it also, you get that 90 frames with other games as well too. So if you're super serious about gaming, it could be a good upgrade for you. If you're more on the casual side, it doesn't really matter, because you're still getting great performance on the iPhone 11. Alright, so I do want to go ahead and talk about some additional features, and I want to go ahead and talk about the stereo speakers. We got them both at max volume. Let's see if we can spot the difference. Okay. Yeah, the 13 Pro definitely sounds a little bit louder, and also I'm not getting the little distortion a little bit on the 11. Yeah, the 13 Pro just sounds a little bit more fuller, but the iPhone 11 still sounds really good. Tons of bass, really good mids and highs. They both did a really great job. It's just the 13 Pro just sounds a little bit more powerful, a little bit louder. So also the vibration motors in both of these phones are really good as well too. So if you've got your phone on vibrate, you'll definitely feel both of these phones as well. Both of these phones have an IP rating, so they're both IP68 dust and water resistant as well, so you can get them wet no problem. And they also have NFC with the Apple Pay, and they both have the wireless charging as well too. But the iPhone 13 Pro does have the new MagSafe charging as well, so if you want to use that. I'm not a huge fan of the MagSafe charging, to be honest. But yeah, so they have a lot of the same additional features. As far as the face unlock, I mean, they both work the same. I didn't really notice the difference. They're both really fast. Yeah, I just the Face ID still works the same, even on the oldest, like the iPhone 10. It still feels about the same, so it still works great. Now let's talk about the camera. So you are getting, in my opinion, a pretty good camera upgrade. So if you take a lot of photos, I think you'll really appreciate the 13 Pro. And if you're on a budget and you have the iPhone 11, you'll really appreciate that. I'm going to show you guys some side-by-side stills, but I want to talk about like the actual upgrades that you're getting here. So the iPhone 13 Pro does have a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto. It does 3x optical zoom, and then we have the ultra wide lens on here as well. That's 12 megapixels. It shoots in 4K, 24, 30, and 60 FPS. And then you have a 12 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K, 24, 25, 30, and 60 FPS. There's also a mode on here, the cinematic mode. Basically, think of it as portrait video. So it just gives you that really cool DSLR type of, look, and it looks really nice if you want like more of a cinematic effect. Also, there is a macro mode on the 13 Pro as well too, so that's something that the iPhone 11 is lacking here. So the iPhone 11, it has a dual camera setup, and it is a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K, 24, 30, 60, and then on the front it's 12 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 4K, 24, 30, 60. As you can see, we do not have that cinematic mode as well too on here. Now the thing that you're missing on here is the telephoto lens, the 3x zoom, and then you're also missing, like I said, the cinematic mode and the macro mode, so getting those really close-up shots and stuff like that. You do not have that on the 11. I'm going to show you guys these side-by-side stills and video. You guys can see, sort of the image quality and see if it's worth upgrading to you. Now let's talk about the battery life. So the 13 Pro has a 3095 milliamp battery on here, and this thing actually can go, for me, 3 days use on this phone, which is pretty incredible. So on a single charge, this thing can get me through 3 days without having to charge it up, which is pretty incredible. You also have 23-watt charging on here as well too, so this charges a little bit faster than the 11. Now the 11 does a really good job, and I have only like 87% battery health on this, so I don't even have a full battery health. But this easily can get 6 hours of screen on time, super easy. It has a 3110 milliamp battery, a slightly slower charging at 18 watts, not a big deal. And like I said, it also has wireless charging, stuff like that. The iPhone 11 still has pretty good battery life. It's not bad battery life at all. And like I said, even with that 87% battery health, like I said, you're getting around 6 hours. So this phone can last me all day, no issues as well on a single charge. But you are getting, in my opinion, a pretty good battery upgrade. So that's pretty much it, guys. Those are like the pros and cons of both of these phones here. So be sure to let me know, what do you guys think? Would you guys make the upgrade? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.